Welcome into NFL on 365 Sports. I'm your host, Grayson Grunhafer. Today, we're going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, a mock draft for the Steelers with the upcoming draft on Thursday. So let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so the Pittsburgh Steelers had kind of one of those off seasons to forget, honestly. And I think Steelers fans are probably happy with the way that it went, right? Because you look at it, Big Ben finally moved on, so they can finally look forward to a new future. And Big Ben was so good for them for so long, such a good quarterback. But by the end of his career, it did not look good. The results were not good, and things just kind of tumbled. And sadly, Big Ben just couldn't get healthy at the end of his career. So now they have to turn in a new direction. And I don't know how happy Steelers fans are, but Mitchell Trubisky is now the quarterback there. And, what we saw from Trubisky in Chicago was not good, but he did get to spend some time in Buffalo, learn under Josh Allen, try to figure out his game and kind of figure out, I think, how to be a pro without the pressures of being a starting quarterback for a really bad organization, which is what he was for the Bears. So I think there's got to be a little bit of optimism there, but I also think he doesn't completely address their quarterback position of the future, which is something we're going to talk about going forward in this draft. And then also a few other positions that I think the Steelers could address to try to make their overall team better, as I'm not really sure they're in a rebuild mode. I think they still want to come out and try to compete because they have a very good defense. I don't think you bring in Mitchell Trubisky unless you're saying, okay, we're going to bring in the best available quarterback we can. We're going to try to win some games, maybe try to make the postseason and go from there. Ultimately, I don't think it will matter. I don't think this is a playoff team this year, even though they do have Mike Tomlin, and I don't want to bet against Mike Tomlin. All he does is win. But I think this is the year where it kind of unravels a little bit, and maybe they prepare for next year's draft to try to get another high draft pick. But for this year's draft, they do have pick number 20. And there's been all kinds of rumors and speculation that the Steelers want to take a quarterback in the first round. I don't think it's a mistake. I think they need to figure out the quarterback position, but I almost think they could wait a year. See what you have with Mitchell Trubisky and then address the quarterback position next year. But I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think teams get quarterback needy and they say, we'll draft quarterback this year. If it doesn't work out, we'll just draft another one next year. And I could see that being the case with the Steelers. And I think at pick 20, the guy that's gotten the most buzz there is Cincinnati quarterback Desmond Ridder. And I don't mind Ridder. I don't think he's a game breaker. I see good things in his game, but I also see some things where I go, ooh, is this guy ever going to really be a starting quarterback in the NFL? But let's go over some of the good things. He's a winner. He won a lot at Cincinnati, 4-year starter. It kind of all came together last year. He threw for over 3,300 yards, 30 touchdowns, also had 355 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground, only threw 8 interceptions, and completed 62% of his passes. So it really all came together. They made a big run, Cincinnati did. He had a great season. But as far as the other side of the spectrum, I don't know that he has an elite arm talent. He's not an elite runner. I just don't know that there's anything elite about his game. So what you have to hope is that he is just a dang good leader who can lead a team that focuses primarily on their defense and a run game, and then he can make enough throws to Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson for them to win football games. That's what you're hoping with Ridder. And if he is that, he gives the Steelers a chance to have a potential quarterback of the future. So I think that's the route they go at pick 20. Moving on to pick 52 in the second round, this is where I think they try to get whoever that quarterback is some help, and also Mitchell Trubisky some help at wide receiver. I think John Mechie, the wide receiver out of Alabama, he had over 2,000 yards and 14 touchdowns the last 2 seasons, but he did tear his ACL in the SEC championship game, so there are questions about whether he will be ready for the start of the year. That's fine. The Steelers have Claypool, they have Johnson, they have Pat Freiermuth, they have Najee Harris. They have plenty of weapons. So whenever he does get healthy, you can bring him back and he can fill an immediate need in the slot. for this Steelers team. I think he's a great pick here. I think he fits exactly what they need at the wide receiver position, and I think he gives them some nice production and is also a little bit of a safety blanket for probably a young quarterback or Mitchell Trubisky, who also definitely needs a safety blanket as well. Moving on to pick 84, this is where the Steelers do their famous boomer bust guy. I think here at 84, they pick the guy who high upside, but is it really going to work out in the pros? And this is a guy who's really fluctuated. I've seen him as high as early in the second round to as far as the fourth round, and that's DeMarvin Leal. The defensive tackle out of Texas A&M. He had 12.5 tackles for loss and 8.5 sacks to go along with 58 tackles this past year. He's 6'4", 290 pounds, a early declaree, so he's young. He's a guy who I think brings immense potential to the Steelers, and the Steelers have done a great job at getting immense potential out of guys who have maybe fallen in the draft. And I think Leal fits that mold really well, while also providing great depth at a position of need for the Steelers up front. I think some other great fits for the Steelers in the first round would be Jordan Davis out of Georgia. I think, again, a very good defense player who would provide some nice depth for the Steelers and be an immediate impact guy for their defense. I think Treylon Burks could be another interesting option at wide receiver if they elect to go that route. I don't really see it. I think Deontay and Chase Claypool, along with Pat Freiermuth and Najee, I mean, that's a lot of weapons. You can get a wide receiver later in the draft, but who knows? Maybe they just love Treylon Burks, and that's the guy they end up going with. I think Logan Hall, the defensive tackle out of Houston, in the second round. Jalen Tolbert, the wide receiver out of South Alabama, potentially at pick 52 would be interesting to me. They've done a great job with kind of hidden wide receivers when you're thinking of Antonio Brown and Deontay Johnson, who went to small schools, and then they end up going to the Steelers and they blow up, and you're like, who's this guy? And he ends up just being a great wide receiver for them. They've recruited the wide receiver position pretty much better than anyone else for the last decade. It's been really fascinating, and I think Jalen Tolbert could fill that mold. Also at pick 84, I think Darian Kinnard, the offensive guard at Kentucky, would be another good option. I know the Steelers need to address their offensive line. They need to be able to run the ball better. But with these first three picks, I think they're going to go a different direction. But Kinnard would be a very intriguing one, potentially in the third round, I think, for the Steelers. As far as trade up goes, the only position I see them trading up for potentially is quarterback. If they think Ritter's going to be off the board, or if they go try to get Kenny Pickett, who of course played college ball at Pittsburgh, I could see that happening. Maybe they try to get that quarterback of the future in this draft class. But outside of that, I don't necessarily see the Steelers trading up. I think trading back could be a possibility if they like some of those second-round quarterbacks better than Ritter. But for the Steelers, I'm just excited to see what they do. They're in kind of rebuild mode for the first time in a while. Mike Tomlin's going to have a draft class where he's really trying to build for the future while also just trying to build around a young quarterback, whether it's Mitchell Trubisky or a rookie quarterback like a Desmond Ridder. But for NFL on 365 Sports, this has been another mock draft with Grayson Grunhaven.